Só aí na bateria dos gamers. Vou iniciar o jogo aí, que é só apresentação, né? Só apresentação do jogo. HellBlade, né? Senua, né? Que é a Sacrifice, que é a personagem desse jogo, né? O jogo, ele vive numa... O jogo só... Como se diz? A história dele, a narrativa é de um jogo da era medieval, né? Nórdica, né? Que é frente à época viking, né? O jeito que essa personagem é casca grossa. E a gente vai continuar o jogo. Eu vou só apresentar mesmo, né? Aí se fala o que do jogo? O jogo, né, tem a Senua como personagem principal, né? É desenvolvido pelos estúdios Ninja Theory, o mesmo que desenvolveu DMC Devil May Cry, né? A história é baseada na mitologia nórdica e possui bastante puzzle, e possui mesmo, viu? Tem muita coisa nesse jogo aqui. Você descobrir, colocar um símbolo numa parede, refletir em vários lugares, para se abrir, né, o selamento de um portal para guerrear com a entidade, né? Na verdade, ela busca a entrada de Hell, né? Que é a Terra dos Mortos, diante a religião e a história nórdica, né? Então ela é uma viking praticamente, essa Senua aí, que luta contra entidades e monstros aí. Monstros não. Contra... como se diz isso aí? Uma entidade, né? Espíritos dos mortos, coisas do tipo assim, né? E é um jogo incrível, né? Pode se ver aí, ó. Ela é nossa heroína, né? Tem play automático. E a gente não tem save, essas coisas. O jogo salva automaticamente. Mas ele começa de novo. Bom, esse jogo ele é de 2017, para quem não lembra, né? Já vai lançar o 2 aí em 2024, né? O Blade 2 vai sair aí para as plataformas. E é isso aí, bora ver o jogo aí. Divirtam-se na bateria dos gamers aí, ó. Um aviso. Se contém spoiler. Ninja Theory aí, ó. Isso é incrível, né? Para uma época medieval, né? Olha lá, os espíritos aparecendo.
What if each one of us is always dreaming, even when awake?
Tamanho da abominação.
And we only see what our inner eye creates for us.
Um gigante dos mortos.
A world shaped by Senua's nightmares. Maybe that's why.
Tão forte a presença dela que ela até caiu, ó. Tentando pegar a espada.
Because if you believe that Senua's reality is twisted, you must accept that yours might be too.
E aí? E olha só. Senua Psicoses
HellBlade Senua's Sacrifice is a video game about Senua, a Celtic warrior on a vision quest into Viking territory.
Jogo da visão da Terra era
But what
viking,
sets
né?
our hero Senua apart is that she suffers from
Ah, uma guerreira celta.
mental illness.
Isso. Não sabia que ela era uma guerreira
The
celta.
original idea for Hellblade was to create a classic hero's journey, a journey of suffering, but one where the fantasy
Esses
world
puzzles é difícil. Olha o gráfico dos
not the
puzzles.
ultimate universe,
Olha
but
isso.
a world that is
Olha os
constructed in
chefões,
Senua's mind.
os boss.
But to do so would mean
Ixi, os
putting
guerreiros.
psychotic mental illness at the center of the experience, a subject that is still considered taboo, and a challenge that was both terrifying and exciting in equal measure.
Eu gostei muito da experiência, foi incrível jogar isso
A
aqui.
newly discovered Celtic goddess called Senua
Olha
in
isso.
Ashwell, Hertfordshire.
Criação do jogo.
When first discovered, her name was thought to be Senua, a name which I liked and kept. I wondered if Senua might have been a Celtic warrior like Boudica, who stood up to the Romans. While the Romans had conquered all of Europe, there was a group of Celts up in the furthest reaches of the Roman Empire that could not be conquered, the Picts. And so the Romans built a wall, called Hadrian's Wall, that spans across Britain from sea to sea to keep the Pictish barbarians at bay. The Picts were known for their war paint, painted on with woad, and their matted hair clumped with lime.
Nem sabia dessa
So
mulher.
Senua would be a barbarian Pict in this image.
What's your name?
Senua.
I haven't seen you before.
I don't live how much.
Oh, Zeno's daughter.
I have to go.
Só pela ser uma celta já é impressionante, né?
Orkney is off the coast of Scotland and was inhabited by the Picts, steeped in
Aí
history.
pensei
and
os
mystery.
romanos.
And so I made Orkney Senua's home and set the stage for a crisis. In the late 8th century, the first Vikings landed on the Orkney Islands. The population of the Picts crashed thereafter, replaced by the Norsemen of the 9th century. Were they wiped out? We don't know for sure, but it would seem likely given the reputation of the Vikings. The Northmen's brutality is legendary.
Então ela é um viking, né?
Chieftains of the tribes they conquered were often offered as sacrifice to their gods. The most brutal of these sacrifices was known as the Blood Eagle. I imagine Senua as a young female warrior who
Sacrifício de
returns
sangue?
home from exile to
Isso
find
não.
her partner, Dillian, brutally sacrificed to a Norse god by these hellish warriors from a faraway land. I imagine the horror of this moment and how it would have dragged her deep into mental torment. I came to learn that the Celts had a sophisticated and nuanced perspective on the nature of mental disorder.
Ah, ela segue uma divindade, né? Pra
Gelt. A Gelt is a man or woman who has
conseguir o que ela quer, né? No
curse,
caso aí.
battle trauma or grief. The
Entendi.
Gelt would take to a life in the woods in search of penance,
Nossa, cara,
punishment,
mas tá
and
sendo devorada?
purgation. And so
Isso.
Senua became a Gelt, cursed by darkness, looking for redemption in the wilds. Another word the Celts used in reference to mental disorders was druid,
Estranho.
meaning fool, or
Por isso que alguma coisa
one who offers the
mordendo
words of
ela.
God. They tell of the mad sinner who flees battle into exile and takes on a beastly nature, growing feathers on his body. A character called Truth
Animalesco mesmo, hein, essas
is a
cenas aí.
well-known person called Findan, an 8th century Irish Celt who was captured and enslaved by the Vikings, but eventually escaped to Orkney where he became a monk.
I will tell you my stories of hell, if I may walk with you.
Upon meeting Senua, it would be his stories that fuel her quest deep into their world of gods.
The Northmen say the world will come to an end. The sun will grow black.
Árvores dos deuses.
Sink into the
Mas
sea.
chamam de árvores dos deuses mesmo?
Disappear. Fire and water will meet. Flames
Olha isso.
flee against the sky.
Terror, suspense das sombras. Olha. Assombração.
Prepare yourself.
A Valhalla é o mundo dos mortos, mais pra...
So the stage
toda a
is set
quantidade
for a
dos
new
mortos.
adventure, a journey into the Norse underworld called Hell, a vision quest fueled by madness and myth. A
Como foi
fantasy
feito
that
a
was
gravação?
created by Senua's
Que
own
isso, hein?
mind, and one that
Incrível,
we would
gostei.
experience through her eyes.
Perfeito o jogo.
This is your quest.
Adorei a experiência.
There is nothing else left.
To make
Já
a
tem
game
hora
about a
estúdios
warrior with psychotic mental
capricharam
illness
também.
as its
Foi
central
incrível.
theme was fraught with danger. Mental illness such as psychosis is still taboo and rarely acknowledged in a century of cinema. Never mind
Tem
the
15
new
gigabytes, eu vou ver
Where it
como é
does
que vai ser esse
feature, it
jogo.
often conflates
Pode
psychosis
continuar aí.
and psychopathy
Finalizar em
associated
5 horas,
with a
acho que é
lack of
isso, né?
empathy.
Que é
It is
isso?
unfortunate that these two words sound so similar
Drácula
that
faz
they are
parte
used
dessas
interchangeably in media.
filmagens
I
de
must admit
medo.
that I didn't have to look
É
very
assim que
far to
pegaram
discover my own ignorance of the subject. So we reached out
suspense do
to Paul
jogo.
Fletcher, psychiatrist and professor of health neuroscience at University of Cambridge.
Psychosis is a descriptive term, and it refers to having a loss of contact with objective reality. So it's characterized by two main sets of symptoms. One of them is hallucinations, where somebody experiences perceptions when there is no actual objective thing out there to perceive. And the other is delusions, where somebody comes to very often bizarre, unpleasant, frightening beliefs when there's no good evidence in favour of them.
There's no doubt about it. The source of the darkness is in Helheim. And the goddess Hela holds his soul there.
We reached out to Welcome, a biomedical research charity that spends billions on research and awareness programs aimed at improving health.
Mental health hasn't always been presented in the media in a way that is particularly helpful. It can be challenging to engage people with the subject matter, and there are a lot of preconceived ideas about mental health, and particularly schizophrenia and psychosis. So we hope our support allows the team to continue to
a gente vê a
collaborate
criação do
with
jogo,
Fletcher
né?
and with those who have experience of psychosis to create a game that provides a fresh perspective on the condition and allows audiences to engage with it in a way that just wouldn't be possible in any other medium.
What started out as a brief consultation
Interessante essa
convinced me
história.
that we were only scratching the surface of an immensely deep and interesting subject. that
Criado em
could enrich and change
2015,
the
né?
very
Começaram a
nature
criação, em
of the game.
2017 foi finalizado e vendido, né? Pela Steam, né? Pelo Xbox, né? One, né? Aqui, PlayStation
Our
4, pelo
understanding
que eu
of
sei, né?
psychosis is still
Olha a
very much a
equipe
mystery, and ways of treating
né,
it
que
are still
desenvolveu
primitive
o
compared to
estúdio.
physical illness. After all,
Já
it
tem hora,
is easy
só
to see
espera,
pain
né?
and suffering caused by physical diseases or physical trauma. It is not so easy to see the mental suffering and trauma of severe mental illness. But what if we could find a way to see it? Games are capable of drawing you in for hours on end, playing the role of a character who is different from you, experiencing their perspective, and actively involving you in a world that functions with a different set of rules. If we were to represent
Impressionante.
Senua psychosis, we would have to simulate voice hearing, a common attribute. But how can we simulate something we have no first-hand experience of? Professor Charles Fernyhough, a leading
Jeez.
expert in voice hearing from Durham University, offered his help.
Hearing voices is an experience that is usually associated with severe mental illness, and crucially we know that hearing voices is a part of ordinary life for many people who don't meet the criteria for mental illness.
Yeah. Oh, it's not him in real life.
We know voices vary according to where they appear in space. Voices can appear far away in the distance, they can
Só que eu
appear
achei
right there,
incrível
they can seem to come
ter
from inside your head.
Based on the information Professor Fernyhough provided, I
criação dos
put together
estúdios.
a sound brief and invited some actors.
tipo de batalha, né? Com
We recorded the
fantasmas, né?
actors
Das
using a
sombras,
binaural
né?
microphone,
De
which
poder
was
maléfico, né?
3D spatial
A nossa
positioning
guerreira
sound,
chegava
replicating
perto
the way sound is
e a magia
heard
negra era
in
tão
ears.
poderosa, tanta
Gives you an
entidade que ela não
incredible sense
conseguia
that the person
ficar de
you are
pé, né?
listening to is right there beside you.
Ela tinha que buscar um símbolo de poder para poder combater o outro símbolo de poder maligno do outro, né? As trevas.
Rachel
Incrível.
Waddingham from the Voice Collective came to our studio with two young voice hearers to speak to
Era a
our
perfeição, né?
We
Ficou
talked at
incrível, eu
length
gostei.
about their experiences, and they listened to our tests, giving us feedback on how we could improve on it.
Uma ótima experiência de jogo, hein?
It's very hard to represent what this experience is like, partly because it's such a personal, intense, emotional experience. It's testament to how Ninja Theory have been listening to what the researchers are saying, but also crucially listening to the experts by experience. What they've come up with is so compelling. It's by far the best representation I've heard of what these experiences are like.
Árvore dos mortos, ó, tudo pendurado. Pelas mãos, pelos braços, pela cabeça, pelos pés.
Other common attributes of psychosis are visions
Quem
and
entrar na terra
flashbacks.
dos mortos,
We
né?
met with Recovery College East, who work with and care for people recovering from severe mental disorders. A group of service
Tava jogando, pelo que eu entendi, ela quer levar uma caveira, né, desse tal... Esse outro viking que foi... Ele morreu numa cerimônia e por isso que ela quer reviver ele no mundo dos mortos.
The people we spoke to, the stories they told were fascinating, harrowing and mind-boggling. The reality of what people experienced was vivid, far exceeding what I could possibly have imagined. We went away itching to represent some of these visions and flashbacks in the game.
Hands feel now, my heart is so, love is so far away. Don't you know how I wanna feel deeper? I could never know how you grow.
Gostei. Tá incrível. Estilo de som, música e a realidade é tipo, você tá vendo que a realidade não é o que parece, né? Tem muita viagenzinha nessa história. Melhorou a árvore, né? Tá mais bonita, né? Essa árvore do paraíso, né? O inferno toda ferrada. Tem uma corrida aí, que aí? Como faz, vai? É isso. Perfeito.
To refine our work, we continue to hold meetings with the Recovery College East over the course of a year and a half, showing them what we had achieved so far and refining the in-game representations based on their feedback. With their help, flashbacks, visions and changes in perception will
Essa é a apresentação do jogo, né? Só tem isso.
The students that are involved in this project are incredibly excited about being involved. They have described the experience as being important because it values their lived experience and shows that despite what we have been through, all of that
Vamos pausar para ver?
experience becomes valid, but actually it's something that we should all be talking about.
The experiences described range from beautiful to frightening beyond comprehension. I heard of a girl who has to live with an angry voice screaming at her, slamming on her doors and walls 24 hours a day. I met someone who would often see hanging corpses in the room, so real that she was
gamers, to rescue them. Os monstros lá. Nossa senhora.
Visions is entirely understandable.
Terror, suspense.
Worthless, weak, pathetic. Go on, feel sorry for yourself, because there is no one left to do that for you.
I was urged by one fellow that we should not shy away from showing this horror, and so I was perpetually torn in making HellBlade. Had we gone too far with our representations?
Da hora, tá incrível, não tá ruim não, o jogo tá...
Broken and lost, just like your soul.
A espada quebrou?
In some ways, voice hearing and visions were the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. There's another aspect of psychosis that is much harder to explain, but one that I think video games are uniquely able to represent, which are often called delusions.
People begin to see patterns in the world. They begin to link things that most people wouldn't link. Most of the things that we might think would be coincidence or, not worth commenting on. Nevertheless, that might have a particular salience or importance for them.
One individual described how everyday words, sounds, colours...
É que uma longa, né? Uma longa história isso aí.
Forming a strange and sinister puzzle that he was determined to solve but could not quite get to the bottom of.
It's not just brain dysfunction. It's not like the system shut down. It's actually an incredibly creative process. The person creates a world populated with voices and phantasms and terrors, and they're completely immersed in it. They believe in it.
We often invite people
Nesse jogo
into the
não tem
studio to play the game.
tipo assim, outros
One of our
personagens, né?
visits, they
No
play
ambiente.
through much of the game, making
Você vai andando numa
us
floresta, de repente você
rooms,
encontra, né, os
and the threat of
vultos,
darkness that
fantasmas,
stalk them.
corpos
There are
espalhados
many
por aí,
things that happen in the world of
pendurado,
HellBlade that make
enforcado.
perfect sense within the context
Na terra
of
dos
Senua's
mortos
world.
e dos
The
vikings
dark
ali, né?
rot that's killing her slowly,
Essa era nórdica, aí não tem
the
ninguém.
secret runes of the gods that block her path to Helheim, and strange associations that exist in the game to confuse you. To complete Senua's quest, you have to internalize and accept the logic and meaning behind these things to progress. Afterwards, they said
Tem muito
that
puzzle de
there's
lógica
mental
nesse jogo.
illness in the game. People with delusions of all sorts would argue the same thing, that they are not aware of their experience being abnormal in any way.
I need this sword. It's important.
Representing perception changes and thinking patterns within HellBlade gives us a set of symptoms common in psychosis. But people with lived experience were keen to emphasize another point, that it is wrong to define a person by the symptoms. Quite often, the illness comes not from the symptoms, but from the stigma, isolation and mistreatment that comes about from the rest of society.
Okay.
They say that I'm cursed. What if they're right?
I needed someone to portray Senua, someone who could believably internalize her suffering. Melina Jurgens, our video editor, had been a stand-in for Senua over a few months while we perfected our motion capture techniques. Without realizing it, she had already auditioned for the role, and I knew her well enough to know that I didn't have to teach her to act, but to relive her own internal pain. As often is the case, those who have suffered mental illness are never far from us. My hope is that by creating a compelling and aspirational character in Senua who feels very much real, albeit in a fantasy setting.
A expressão real do jogo, né? Que é isso, né? Cada vez mais fenomenal. A produção de jogos, né? É isso. Parece meio real de filme, né? É isso. A ação da coisa toda do jogo.
She was always prone to psychosis as a child. Her mother Galina also heard voices and had visions, so perhaps there was a genetic aspect. Or perhaps it was cultural, as she lived within a world without science, of gods and superstition, as exemplified by her druid father Zimbal. Psychosis developed in her late teens to early 20s and was exasperated by stigma and isolation at the hands of the clansmen and her father.
Stop. It's spreading.
The trauma of seeing her lover Dillian sacrificed tips her over the edge, making her remodel her reality around a concept that connects everything. The darkness. So the question is what
pegando umas feridas demoníacas ali, preto a mão dela.
It is her reality.
All of her suffering will have been for nothing. It's just a matter of time.
Towards the end of the project, service users and professionals that had collaborated with us were invited to see the near-final game. It was a chance to see if the game had reflected their views or if it had misrepresented them.
For me, being involved in especially developing Senua's character has been really important, and being able to bring in my perspective and what I see and what I hear, and having that built into the game has been a real privilege. It's gritty and it's meaty, and there are some tough subjects in there that are being tackled with honesty. I was blown away by it today, absolutely blown away. It was just fantastic to get the opportunity to use our lived experience in a very creative way.
Incrível mesmo, tá?
There's nothing tokenistic about the work we've put in. It feels like we've been listened to, things have been taken on board, and I think there was a lot of realism in the game itself, and it feels very authentic.
HellBlade will give people a good experience of what it's like to hear voices and have those experiences. I'm glad that the guys at Ninja Theory have asked us to come along and help the building experience. When it comes out, and get myself a copy and have a go.
É uma ótima experiência jogar esse gameplay.
I think all the way through I was really inspired by how the conversations had translated into the game in a way that I think I didn't imagine was possible. So wonderful, really wonderful.
I really hope that others will follow the lead they've set and use the power of something like a video game to change people's perceptions, to increase understanding, and ultimately to make some of the stigma around voice hearing and other experiences go away.
For me, it was really exciting to see something that I explore scientifically being represented so beautifully in a character who's trying to penetrate the mysteries of the environment in which they've been placed, with all of this strange uncertainty and noise and conflicting information that they're getting. I'm very excited about this way of trying to represent mental illness, because I think it actually might be offering us insights that we wouldn't get from pure scientific explorations, and actually giving us quite an empathic view of what it might be like.
Mental illness has been with us for as long as we have been on this planet. But why? Why hasn't evolution stamped out this weakness from within our gene pool? I often pondered this question until I realized that the question had an inbuilt flaw. It assumes that being and thinking differently is a weakness. The only reason we have computers, spacecraft, medicine, poetry, art, and yes, even video games is because individuals are able to simulate new abstract realities in their minds and share them with the rest of us. We need people to be willing to see differently in order for us to progress and survive as society. And we need to be open to these new ways of seeing. And it is this spirit that motivated me to create Senua's story and share it with you.
Né? Impressionante narrativa, é isso aí. A batalha dos gamers. E é isso. O jogo é longo aí, começa. Ó, eu vou parar, só vou continuar aqui de onde eu tava aqui, ó. Só pra mostrar o tipo de estilo de puzzle que tem esse jogo. Que eu não consegui passar ainda. Descobri o jogo. Fazendo o que? Eu tô jogando o jogo, né? Só apresentar no canal aqui, né? Só apresentação, por enquanto. Depois a gente vê de jogar o jogo todo, né? Fica legal. E é isso aí, né? Batalha dos gamers. Vamos ver. Senua Sacrifice. HellBlade. Estúdios Ninja. Não saiu, entrei, né? Pronto. O loading. Um real gênio, né? Um real ingênio. Senua. cenas de psicose, eu vi, né? Violento. Pouco, né, de jogo assim. Continuar. Só queria mostrar onde eu parei no jogo, em que parte. Parei aqui, ó, que eu não sei onde que é. A gente corre. Esse é o puzzle, ó. Se aparecer isso aqui, ó. Tem que desvendar o jeito da gente fazer ele, né? Subir ele pra cá. Vou entrar aqui, ó. Pra saber como é que eu entro ali. Não sobe não. Não escala também. Sabe que nessa época tá fraca mesmo. Passo por cima, será que essas cordas? Vê que ela corre, ainda bem, né? Que ela tem uma corrigida aqui. Posso ver que tá vendo atrás de mim, não tá? Não tem ninguém. Ó. Temos aqui, ó.